welcome to another monthly Excite webinar. We host this every single month. If you join our community for the first time, welcome. Hopefully we can continue to provide value to you. So this presentation is titled Deal or No Deal, an investor's guide to multifamily underwriting. And I cannot quite see anybody because of the way my computer is set up. So if you have any comments or any questions, just drop it in the chat. And my team will be able to tally that at the end of the presentation. So let's get started. Before we jump into the presentation today, I just want to stress that I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a lot of things, but I do not give investment advice. This presentation today is for educational purposes only. So please consult your tax advisor, your legal advisor, and your financial advisor for any investment related decisions. If you're joining our community for the first time, Excite Capital was founded by these three ambitious men who were all equally successful in their respective careers, but found an opportunity to lead a mission that was much bigger than each one of their individual goals. So Excite Capital is led by Dr. Julius Oni, who is the CEO and also the co-founder of Excite Capital. He's also an orthopedic surgeon. Leslie Awasom, Leslie Awasom, who is also the co-founder and the director of operations at Excite Capital and a former CRNA. And Tenny Tolofari, who is also a co-founder, director of acquisitions, and recently named chief growth officer of Excite Capital. But behind these three giants are a group of tenacious, resilient, go-getters that would simply not take no for an answer. So I'll be remiss if I did not mention the rest of the team, which is Addie, Yvonne, Alicia, Miles, Mike, Olu, Chris, and Josil, who recently joined the team, but is not listed on here. So what's Excite's mission? Our mission is to create generational wealth for our investors and their family. And when I talk about generational wealth, I'm not talking about getting rich. I'm talking about wealth that spans several generations. And we accomplish this by collaborating with our investors to get them to financial freedom, at the same time empowering the communities where we acquire apartment buildings. And for my passive investors out there, stick around to the end because I have something for you at the end of the presentation. Excite's current portfolio. So a lot of our deals are in the southeast region of the United States. We have a portfolio that spans over 168 million in assets. That's over 832 doors. We have properties in Georgia, South Carolina, Baltimore, DC, Indiana, and we have a project right now in Gwinnett County that we should be closing in a few weeks, and I'm super excited for that one. We've gone full circle on one deal, the View on St. Andrews, and our investors got a sizable return from that deal. So who am I and why am I here talking to you about multifamily investing? Well, my name is Manny Awasom, and like Leslie already stated, Leslie is my older brother. I went to the University of Maryland, College Park. Go Terps. I got my Bachelor's of Science of Electrical Engineering. Shortly after that, I worked as an engineer for a power company. Then I transitioned as an IT consultant for Accenture for a few years. But like any ambitious go-getter, I wanted more. So I went back to pharmacy school, got my doctorate of pharmacy. In 2015, I moved to Los Angeles, which is my dream city, did my residency, and I've stayed there ever since, practicing as a clinical pharmacist. So you're probably wondering, why is a clinical pharmacist talking to you about multifamily investing? That's a good question. It's a fair question. So back in 2017, Leslie and I decided to venture into real estate. And we did this by getting our feet wet with single family, like any new investor that wants to invest in real estate. So we bought our first property in 2017, and the investment thesis immediately hit because we were getting cash flow from that property. But before we could even celebrate our wins, Leslie had met Tenny, got red pilled, and immediately transitioned into multifamily properties. But I continued with single family investing, trying to see how I can grow that. But before long, they had brought me on board, showed me the numbers, and from a numbers perspective, it made no sense investing in single family at that time. So I started working with Excite Capital early on in 2019, first on an as-needed basis, but found my niche, got good at it, and then eventually joined Excite Capital in the later half of 2020 as the primary underwriter. So today I currently work as the primary underwriter for Excite Capital, and using those challenges that I faced starting off in multifamily investing as an underwriter, and all the experiences that I've learned over the years. Last year, I founded Microshift Analytica, which is a platform dedicated to simplifying multifamily underwriting. Aside from all the serious stuff, I love investing, fitness, weightlifting, hiking, watching the Lakers. Welcome home, Luka. I still represent the home team, the Commanders, Jay Daniels. We coming back next year. And I enjoy traveling the world with my fiance, Mimi. But I'm pretty sure you didn't show up to this presentation today to hear me talk about my hobbies. So let's talk about multifamily investing. And having given this presentation, similar presentations to other aspiring multifamily investors, and leading underwriting class here at Excite Capital, one thing that I've realized is that a lot of people do not like numbers. And I know this because the moment I mentioned the word, before I even mentioned the word, this is the energy that I get from the crowd. And I can't even tell you what the audience looks like by the end of the presentation. So I've learned my lesson from past presentations. So this time I'm going to do something different. But please just stick with me because it's all going to come full circle at the end. Earlier, I mentioned that Tenny was recently promoted to, or was recently awarded the title at Excite Capital as the Chief Growth Officer. And there's a reason for that. If you've ever met Tenny, the guy does not stop talking. He's always thinking about ways where he can expand the business, a new venture, a new app. And I cannot tell you how happy I am for ChatGPT, because now he can take those ideas and bring them to reality. So one of Tenny's genius ideas is to start an Excite Capital ice cream truck business with the tagline, "Excite your taste, one scoop at a time," right? Excite Capital is focused on buying multifamily apartment buildings. There's a bunch of kids in those neighborhoods. What if we expand the brand by having an Excite Capital ice cream truck outside of every Excite building? How cool would that be to expand the brand? So from a business perspective, you're thinking about this, everybody's familiar with ice cream. Everybody can relate. It reminds us of our childhood, chasing the ice cream truck to get some ice cream. So it's something that you can relate to. So, but when you're thinking about it from a business perspective, what are some of the things you would think about if you wanted to start an ice cream truck business? Well, you have to research the market, right? Who's the target audience? Is it just solely going to be Excite Capital tenants that live in our apartment? Or are we going to have these trucks outside of like corporate centers, outside of parks, like busy parks, like during the summer? Where's going to be the best location? Obviously, we want it somewhere where it's warmer, right? With global warming now, we're having hotter summers and colder winters. So we don't have this. We don't want to have this business in Alaska. We want it somewhere where it's really hot, like Texas. What about, is it going to be year round or just during peak seasons? And who are our competitors? We need to know our competitors when we go into the market. You also want to think about permits, right? What permits do you need? Do you need health permits? Do you need any insurance permits, liability insurance, all of that? And in order to get some kind of profit margin, is it going to be prepackaged or is it going to be homemade? So these are all of the things that you will be thinking about as a business owner. And there's a reason you're thinking about all of those things, because you're trying to limit your risk to the downside and see if this is a viable investment. But when you put it in this perspective, a lot of us understand it. Even people that don't like numbers, it makes sense to them because it's ice cream. When they were younger, they used to go get ice cream. They saw the ice cream guy collecting money. So it makes sense from an investment perspective. I'm not saying it's a great investment, but it's easy for you to rationalize the risk and determine if it's a good deal or a bad deal. But here's the thing. What we just did, that is actually, well, I'm not going to say the U word, right? But that's actually what we just did. So let's get back to real estate. So I offer you two deals. I come to you, the audience, everyone in the audience, and I say, hey, I have these two investments. I think you'll be interested in it. One is investment A, and the other investment is investment B. And I want you to pick one to invest in. So just drop in the chat which one you want to invest in, A or B. And I can't really see the chat. So Leslie, if you can just tell me who's voting A and who's winning. Leslie, can you hear me?
We got a B. Yeah, we got B, B, B. Everybody's going for B.
B. Okay.
Oh, people like nice stuff. Everybody's going for B.
B.
Heidi
Okay.
got A. All right,
Daddy.
Sharon B. B is winning.
B is winning. Okay.
B B is winning. I guess B is for billions. Everybody wants billions.
Okay. Great. Thanks for that response. But in 45 minutes, my hope is that all of you should be staring at your phone, staring at your computer, and screaming, no deal for both of those. So in 45 minutes, that's my goal for this presentation. So now let's get to the meat of it. What is multifamily underwriting? If you do a quick Google search, just type in multifamily underwriting, the first hit that you get is that multifamily underwriting is the process of evaluating a multifamily property's financial and operational data to determine if it's a good investment. But think about it, guys. If we just replace that word multifamily properties and insert Excite Capital ice cream truck business, essentially what we just did in the previous slide was underwriting that deal. So when you think about multifamily underwriting, it makes sense because multifamily properties are considered businesses. Unlike single family homes, where we started with, multifamily properties are valued based on the income they generate. You want to make your property more valuable? Well, increase the income of your property, whether it's upgrading the units and increasing rent, that increases the revenue of your property, whether it's cutting back on expenses. So you can either increase the income or cut back on expenses, and that increases your overall NOI. So the value of your home, with all things staying the same, such as cap rates, goes up. So it makes sense from that perspective because multifamily properties are really businesses and you're just assessing the risk. So when you think about multifamily underwriting, it comes down to risk assessment. Don't overcomplicate it, guys. It comes down to risk assessment. And when I'm thinking about these risks, I like to quantify them into three primary buckets. One is the market risk, the property risk, the lending risk, and the macro risk. So now let's talk about each one of these. So starting with the market risk. If you wanted to purchase a property, right? Let me just set the framework. What is the product? The product is the multifamily apartment, correct? What are your customers? So similar to the ice cream truck business, the product was the ice cream. Our customers were the kids that we want to purchase the ice cream. Well, when it comes to multifamily, the product is the multifamily apartment, and the customers are your tenants. So you need to find an alignment between your product, your multifamily apartment, and your customers, your tenant. So you need to find that alignment, and that's how you know you have a good product. But how do you find that alignment? Well, you want to go into a market where you have tenants. So you want to check the population growth. Check the population growth. Is it growing over the last 10 years or has it been declining? So over the last 10 years, you want at least 1 to 2% increase in the population to show that there's a positive trend in the population. Because you don't want to go buy a brand new apartment in an area where no one is in that area, because then who is going to rent your property and your business plan is going to fail. And what impacts that population growth? Well, people go to areas where there's jobs. So if you find an, excuse me, if you find an area where there's an increase in growth, in job growth, typically the population will also be growing. And that also applies to the income growth. But here's the thing. If all of you are looking at the population growth, the job growth, the income growth, guess what? I'm also looking at the same metrics, right? And 100 other multifamily investors are looking at that same metric. So once we find a location that's great, we all want to go to that location and start buying existing multifamilies, and the developers want to come in and start developing newer properties. So you also have to balance the supply and the demand dynamics, right? And in multifamily underwriting, we have metrics such as the absorption ratio or the construction absorption ratio, which looks at the number of units that are being built and how quickly those units are being absorbed, because that is important as well. You always want to pay attention to your competition. Also, the crime rate. Your tenants want to live in an area where it's safe. If the crime rate starts going up, you're going to have a lot of tenants start moving out of that location, and then you lose your customers, and then you can't collect rents, and you may default on your property. So these are some of the many metrics that you have to take a look at when you're trying to screen a location to see if it's a good location for investment. But if you're on this call today, we have created a checklist called a multifamily checklist, and it's a free checklist that helps you. It includes the metrics that I mentioned, in addition, a few more, but it highlights these metrics that are very critical when you're trying to screen a particular location to determine if it's a good area to invest in or not. In addition, this metrics is going to tell you things to avoid, recommended tools to use, both free and paid. And you can use this to screen initial deals so you don't spend a lot of time you don't waste your time analyzing every single deal in a bad location. So you can scan the QR code or visit msanalytica.com/checklist and get your free copy. It's absolutely free. I love free stuff. So now let's go to an example of population growth. We talked about you want to find an alignment between your product and your customers. So if the population is growing, that's potentially a good area to invest in. So now I have two deals that we're looking at. One is Grove Park View, which is actually a deal that we have under contract right now and should be closing in a few weeks. And the other is one of the properties that I showed you earlier in the presentation. So if you look at Grove Park View, which is located in Gwinnett County, you can see that the population growth almost looks like a hockey stick. It's been consistently growing over the past since 1970 and over the last 10 years. And there's a reason for that. One, there's the job growth. Two, the income growth in that area has also been increasing. So these are the things, and there's a lower crime rate in Gwinnett County. So these are the things that you want to look for when you see something like this. And this is why we're so excited once we came across Grove Park View, because you can clearly see that there's a demand for that area. And with limited supply coming on the market, then there's the outlook for your investment looks great. Now compare that to the property on the right, which is one of the properties that I showed you earlier, and you guys were dropping AOB in the chat, and located in St. Louis, Missouri. You can see there's a consistent decline in population. These are areas that you probably want to avoid. But keep in mind, real estate is hyper local. So you may have a location where the population growth has been stagnant or declining, but there's a pocket within that market that is thriving. So always keep in mind, start from top, but try to zero in and check the particular location for the property you're looking to invest in to see how that's doing compared to the general submarket. So that's a positive for Grove Park View and a no-no for the property on the right. Now let's talk about property risk. And remember the picture I showed you earlier? Well, this is where you really start to see investors feeling like this, taking off their glasses, shutting off their brain, and just closing their ears when it comes to property analysis. Because this part of underwriting is when you roll off your sleeve, really get underneath the hood, and start assessing the property itself. You do this by assessing the financial analysis, so the historical financials of that property. And then you come up with your pro forma to determine how the property is going to fare once you take over and for the duration of your whole period. And then your property inspection when you're doing your due diligence and you have the property on the inspections. Now, let's take a closer look at each one of these. The first is the financial analysis. And I will tell you, this was the part I struggled with the most when I first started underwriting, because it can be quite complex. Even till this day, talking to a lot of underwriters and just watching a lot of webinars, a lot of experienced underwriters still struggle with analyzing rent rolls and profit and loss statement. But let's just back up a little bit. So when you find a property that you're looking to invest in, there are two main documents that you need. You're going to receive a bunch of documents from the seller or the broker, but the two absolute documents you need in order to do a preliminary analysis are your rent roll and your profit and loss statement. You might receive the age receivable report, the tax bill, the construction details. You're going to receive all of that, and those are all important. But if you get a financial data from a broker and it doesn't have the rent roll or the profit and loss statement, then move on to the next deal. A unit mix table is not the same as a profit as a rent roll. You want the existing current rent roll of the property. But the rent roll is a document that's going to tell you the total number of units at that property, the different unit types, the sizes of each of those unit types, the which tenants are staying in which unit, and the lease information for each of those tenants, when they moved in, when they're going to move out, how much they're paying, what the property manager thinks that unit should be rented for, which is like your market rent. So that's what the rent roll data is going to present. But some of these documents can be quite complex. You might receive a rent roll that's like 400 lines, and you have to analyze it and break it down into a unit mix table that is just 4 lines that just tells you these are the different unit types, these are the average rents for each of those unit types, these are the number of vacant units, and these are the number of occupied units. That's what you're trying to take this rent roll and convert it into an easily digestible information. The same applies to the T12. The T12, or the trailing 12 document, like it's commonly called. Sometimes you see people refer to it as a profit and loss statement, because it tells you all the income that property is currently generating, whether it's from rent, other income such as reimbursements, parking, storage free, any fees that's being charged to the tenant. It will tell you all the income that property is currently generating and all the expenses that it takes to manage that property on a day-to-day basis, so the operating expenses. And when you're reviewing these documents, remember I mentioned this is where a lot of people just stop. They move on to like investor relations and try to do something else, because you have to dissect these numbers. You're trying to identify risk. Remember, when we're underwriting, we're trying to identify, we're assessing the risk of that investment. And it's not that these multifamily properties do not have risk. We want to identify the risk ahead of time and come up with mitigation strategies for these risks once we have the deal under contract. So as you're looking at this profit and loss statement, the things that you're trying to find are outliers. Why is the bad debt increasing from month to month? Why is there significant concessions and the broker is telling you can increase rent, but they've been offering us a lot of concessions to all the tenants from month to month? Why was there a significant expense charge for plumbing? Why is that recurring? Is there a leaky pipe? Do you need to replace? So you're trying to identify all these risks. For example, if I find a repair and maintenance cost that's significantly high because there was a plumbing issue, I might talk to the broker and say, hey, what's going on here? If he tells me, hey, they've had like frozen pipes and they need to replace, you can say, okay, you know what? I can budget for that once I take over the property, but at least I have that in my budget because that's a risk that I identify. And similar to the rent roll, you have to take this profit and loss statement document that can sometimes be 1,000 lines, break it down into easily digestible income and expense line items. And this is where a lot of investors struggle. And that's what drove me to creating, and that's what drove me to creating the MSA Analyzer. Because with the MSA Analyzer, I didn't start off trying to create these groundbreaking products. I essentially took all my pain points when it came to underwriting, and I converted those to features within the analyzer. So the rent roll, when I used to spend 10 hours in the hospital, come back and spending another 5 hours to 1 a.m. trying to analyze one rent roll, I took that pain point and I converted it into a feature in the MSA Analyzer, where now I can copy that rent roll, the same rent roll I used to struggle with, paste it into the MSA Analyzer, and in less than 3 minutes, I have a fully completed unit mix table as well as a lease up table, and gives me the information that I need to continue to underwrite. So something that used to take me sometimes with more complex deals 3 hours, I can underwrite a full deal in less than 30 minutes or an hour max. And the same thing applies to the T12. I can copy that T12 document, use mapping feature within the MSA Analyzer to come up with an easily digestible T12 table. And then all of that that carries on to my Proforma tab, and I can quickly do my analysis to determine if it's a good deal or a bad deal. And here's the thing. The reason is you're going to underwrite a lot of crappy deals to find a deal that actually pencils. I cannot tell you how many deals we screen, how many deals we underwrote before finding Grove Park View. It's going to be a lot, right? So this is not an easy task, but you want to find ways that will reduce those tasking steps when it comes to underwriting. If you want to learn more about the MSA Analyzer, you can visit msanalytica.com. So now let's go on to future projections. So the first part is your financial analysis. And I didn't talk about property taxes and debt because those are things from the financial analysis, because in most deals, those are things that you have to work with a tax broker or a lender to get that information. But for some properties, they may have like a tax abatement in the property that you've taken over, but you still have to work again with your tax advisor. And when it comes to lending, even if you're assuming a debt, you have to work with a lender to make sure that you have the right debt on the property. And I'll talk about debt once we get to the lending section. Future projections. How am I doing on time, Leslie?
You're doing great, man. Keep going.
Time. Okay, great. Just making sure. Okay, future projections. When it comes to future projections, this is where you're trying to forecast how that property is going to do in the next few years. Because with these multifamily properties, right, we're not buying them to hold it forever. A lot of these deals change hands for your short-term hold periods, like 3 to 5 years, for more stable core assets, like 7 to 10 years. So investors do not buy these deals and hold them forever. They buy these deals with an end in mind and say, okay, we're going to exit in 3 to 5 years, or we're going to exit in 10 years. So during that period, you have to project the rent growth, the expense growth, and the exit cap rate, which helps determine your exit price when you plan to exit. You can utilize third-party companies like CoStar, Yardi Matrix, RealPage. They will help you with coming up with forecasted data for like rent growth as well as projected cap rates. But you want to take this information, speak to your property manager who is in the market, who is in the weeds, know what's going, see how the market is changing, to make sure both of those projections align. This is an example of a rent growth data that I pulled from CoStar for the property that we have under contract right now. And you can see the chart for rent growth is very similar to most markets, where you had that decline in rent growth in 2023 after a significant rise post-COVID. And you can see in the next few years, rent growth is starting to pick back up. But this is where I mentioned that real estate is hyper local, because if you look at this rent growth chart, that's of Gwinnett County. But if we pull up the chart of the rent growth for Grove Park View specifically, you can see that property has been outperforming the market. And there's a reason for that, because Grove Park View is located in Gwinnett County, which is closer to Parkview High School, which is one of the top high schools in Atlanta. So a lot of families live in Grove Park View so they can send their kids to Parkview High School. So that's why there's an increased demand for tenants to live in that property. Again, always remember, you have your product and you have your customers, and you want to find that alignment between the products and the customers. And we also looked at CoStar to get a projections for the cap rates, because cap rates play a significant role when you're trying to exit these properties. To determine your exit price, you take your net operating income divided by what that market cap rate is. And cap rate is just a measure of sentiment, right? It's impacted by your interest rate, the 10-year rate, and all of that. But it measures the market sentiment, and it goes either up or down. If it goes up, that means the valuations of your properties are going down. And if it goes down, cap rate compression, then the value of multifamily properties go up, with all things equal in terms of like NOI. So you're trying to come up with the future projections for your rent growth, expense growth, and exit cap rate. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this once we get to the macro risk. But this is part of your analysis of the property once you start assessing the property risk. If you're looking at a property where it shows negative rent growth for the future, then you probably want to avoid that property altogether. Because why would you go invest in a property where the next 5 years is showing that the rent growth will continue to decline? So that's something that you want to avoid. Again, assess your risk. Next, we have the property inspection. So this is when you have the property under contract. Even before you have the property under contract, I always recommend, if you underwrite a deal and it has potential. If I the first time I underwrote Grove Park View, the first initial underwriting, it looked very promising, and I immediately texted the team like, "Hey, Tenny, you need to get over to Grove Park View, take a look at it." And the reason we want to do that is because, on one hand, you can look at pictures on Google, but you also want to get there, set an appointment with a broker, walk the property to assess that the pictures online actually matches what's at the property. Then they're not going to give you direct access to all the units when you just initially walk in it, but they're going to give you enough access where you can look at the outside, assess the roofs, and then come up with your preliminary budget. But once you have the property under contract, then you get to do your due diligence. This is when you bring your entire property management company. They bring their crew. You go to the property for a few days, walk every single unit. Right? When I mean every single unit, I mean you go into every single unit, walk that unit, take pictures, make sure that whatever business plan you have in your underwriting matches what's at the property. If we're underwriting to replace one roof, but we show up doing our due diligence and we realize that 3 of the buildings have older roofs that needs to be replaced, guess what? We have to go back and update our underwriting. And sometimes it may affect your profit margin. So due diligence is significant. It's very, very, very important. So these are pictures that I actually took when we went to Grove Park View during the due diligence. And you can see on the bottom left, the picture, those were some of the roofs that we identified that we potentially have to replace. And guess what? We had already budgeted for that, because when Tenny went to do his preliminary analysis, he had noted that some of the roofs needs to replace. But what if he had missed that? Then we would have to come back, update our underwriting to make sure that we include the budget for the roofs. And it's at that point, it's good because we have the property manager there. We have the entire crew there. They're walking on top of all of the roofs to make sure they're in good shape. And then we look at the classic versus the renovated units, because once you get the rent roll, if you have units that's been renovated, those are going to be stated in the rent roll. If you have classic units, those are going to be stated in the rent roll as well. So when you're doing your projections and your pro forma, you want to factor in how much you'll be able to achieve from a value add business plan if you were to renovate the remaining classic units. So I actually had my laptop in one of the renovated units because I have to verify that the information that I had, that we had projected that we are going to do once we take over the property, that's actually what's going on at the property. Also, you want to check if there's any like hookups for like washer and dryer. We can see that this classic unit already have a washer and dryer, but some units just had a hookup. So you want to look how many units need a washer and dryer, because you can install a washer and dryer for what, $1,100 and collect $50 in premiums every month from the tenants. And that's additional income. Remember, these are businesses. Any opportunity you can increase the revenue, you increase the value of your property. I think this is a perfect segment to talk about Grove Park View. I mentioned earlier that this is a deal. I'm super excited about this because the minute I first underwrote Grove Park View, I knew it was a gem, and I'm so glad that it's proven to be just that, having this under contract right now. But we're a few weeks away from closing this. Actually, not a couple of weeks from closing this deal. We're in the final stages. We're so thankful for our investors that have been on us on this journey, finally getting to the finish line. But we do have a few limited spots. So if you're interested to join the investors, the other investors on Grove Park View, please scan the QR code or reach out to one of our investor relations, and they'll be more than happy to give you more information about Grove Park View. So you can scan that QR code. I'll give you a few seconds. And if someone from our team can also just drop the link where you can schedule an appointment with Alicia, who is our investor relations, and she'll be more than happy to give you more information about Grove Park View. But this is one of the deals where the example with the population growth and the rent growth that I use, that's located in Gwinnett County. And you can do the same research as well. Use the same checklist that I provided to you. Take that checklist, apply it to Grove Park View, and you can see why we really love this investment. Okay, going back to lending risk. So this is the third bucket, lending risk. When it comes to loan and getting a loan on a property, what makes multifamily such a good investments for multifamily investors is because you can leverage the bank to purchase multi-million-dollar properties, but it comes at a cost. And the reason is, so the lender is likely going to be your biggest partner, because the lender comes in with about 50% or 60% of the money you need in order to close or get these deals. So you can leverage the bank to acquire these large properties. But It's important, and I need to stress this. Debt is a tool, right? You want to make sure you use the right tool for the right product. So the right loan for the right property. Let's say you were looking at a stabilized deal, core assets, 2021 build, just completed lease up. You want to buy this property on hold for the next 10 years. Guess what? You shouldn't be looking at a short-term debt because you want to hold this property for a long time. So you should be looking at a fixed long-term, at least 10 years on that property. And the reason is because with core stabilized assets, the value is not going to come from forced appreciation. The value is going to come from holding that property and for the next 10 years, and it slowly appreciates over time. But now let's switch to a value add deal, a 1987 deal, an older deal in the 90s that already gone through some wear and tear, and you want to buy that property, do an extensive value add to it, upgrade it, and exit in 3 to 5 years. Now, you wouldn't want to put the same type of loan, a 10-year fixed rate loan, on a short-term business plan. Why? Because when you try to exit by year 5, that property is going to get hit with a significant amount of prepayment penalty. So if you have a 10-year loan on a 5-year business plan, believe me, you'll be paying a significant amount of prepayment penalty. So it's important to note, that when you're picking a loan, you make sure it matches your business plan and the property that you're getting that loan for. Are you going to be getting a fixed rate loan or a floating rate loan that's based on SOFR? And are you going to get a senior debt, a loan, or are you going to add a supplemental debt? And if you add a supplemental debt, how does that impact your common investors on the capital stack? So these are all of the things that you want to be mindful of as you're underwriting these deals and making these decisions. If you're doing an interest-only period, for example, with bridge debt, how does that impact the payoff at the end of the investment? Because remember, none of this is free. Even if you get a loan from a lender that says 5 years interest only, guess what? You're still going to pay that loan at the end of the business deal. So it's either you pay it early on or you get that cash flow early on and pay that amount at the end of the investment. So you have to balance these risks and see which one fits your business plan. Lenders are also going to have certain requirements. Some lenders may require a lender held reserves. This is not common now, but during COVID, we saw a lot of this. But the lenders also have certain constraints or limitations that they'll place on the loan they're trying to give you. The amount of money they give you may be constrained by the debt service coverage ratio. Most lenders try to limit that to a minimum of 1.25. The debt yield, the loan to value, or the loan to cost. Some lenders will use a combination of all of them and pick a minimum, whichever one to use. So as you're doing your preliminary analysis, you want to have an idea what most of the lenders would do. For example, if I'm trying to analyze a deal today, I would probably set the debt service coverage ratio at 1.3 or 1.25 to get a preliminary quote for the debt, because you don't want to reach out to the lender every single time you do a preliminary analysis. You want to be able to assess it based on preliminary quotes that you can come up with, and the MS Analyzer can help you with this as well, and come up with that number. And if it pencils and is looking good and you're moving forward in the deal analysis process for that deal, then you want to get a quote. You don't want to be bombarding the lender or the person at the lending office every single time you get a deal and you run your preliminary analysis. Only reach out to them when you have a deal that closely meets your investment criteria and your profit margin. Now, the last of that risk bucket is the macro risk, so macroeconomic risk. And again, regardless of your political affiliation, as a multifamily investor, you have to keep tabs on what's going on with the Fed or what's going on in Congress, because the decisions and the policies they make directly impact your multifamily investments. Always go into this investment with an end in mind. We're not buying these properties to hold forever. If you find a rock solid deal you want to hold for the rest of your life, great. but always have an exit plan. So from the moment you purchase that property to when you eventually exit, there's a lot of things that's going to happen to it. There's a lot of things that's going to impact your investment thesis. And a lot of that has to do with what the Fed is doing as well as what Congress is doing. The Fed has two main mandates, right? The first is control unemployment, and the second is limit inflation. Well, let's take a look at those two mandates. If unemployment goes up, what happens? Well, your tenants, some of them may become jobless, so they can't pay rent. And what does that happen? Well, you can't make your loan payments. And do you think the bank cares? No, the bank still wants their money, and you can't make the debt payments, so you default on your property. What about inflation? Remember earlier we talked about expense growth. So if you had projected a 3% expense growth and inflation continues to go up, let's say 8%, like it did during COVID, what do you think happens? Now the cost of goods and services also goes up. So you had budgeted to increase your expenses by 3%, but now your expenses are increasing by 5% every year. So now that cuts into your income or your net operating income. So that cuts into your investment thesis. Again, you may not be able to pay your loan, your interest to the lender, and that may affect your business plan and the value of your property. Also, economic policies also impact the bond market and the long-term rates. Multifamily fixed interest rates are based on the 10-year treasury for a 10-year hold or the 5-year treasury, because the lender would take the treasury rate, add a spread to it, and that gives you your interest rates. So if there are policies that are being passed that are impacting the 10-year treasury, guess what? That's also impacting the interest rates. And that's why we've seen a fluctuation in interest rates over the past months in multifamily, because with every new soundbite, the 10-year treasury is changing. So the interest rates are also changing. So you want to, and I'm not saying like have MSNBC on speed dial or like listening to everything. No, there's a bunch of multifamily publications, Berkadia, CoStar, that are constantly releasing information about the multifamily space, how it's being affected by Congress. So sign up, subscribe to all of those publications, because they put out a lot of free data, because you want to know this information, because that directly impacts your investment. Also, what are the potential effects of policy changes on taxes, tariffs? We're dealing with that right now. Accelerated depreciation. A lot of investors are looking forward to that. Immigration laws. How does that affect the workforce and your employers that you're going to have at the multifamily property? Affordable housing. Is that going to affect the low income tax credit? Government sponsored agencies. Are those going to remain public or become privatized? Guess what? That also affects the lending environment. So these are things that you want to keep a tab on, because all of those, as they change the sentiment in investing in multifamily. And as the multifamily investing thesis sentiment changes, guess what? Cap rates also change. So in the past 2 years, we've seen the Fed increase. I mean, recently they started cutting back, but they increased interest rates, almost 13 times, right? And then what happened? So they increased interest rate, lending became tighter. So the multifamily sentiment, investing sentiment went down. And as sentiment goes down, guess what? Cap rates go up. If cap rates go up, valuations goes down. So that's what we've been experiencing in the multifamily space, in addition to all the oversupply that we've seen in the Southeast region, in Austin and Texas. So always remember, as you making these investments, whether as a passive investor or an active investor, just sign up for these publications and just keep a tab what's going on in the market. So back to Tenny's amazing idea, right? So one scoop at a time, excite ice cream truck business. So if we take a look at what we just went through, right? We just described the 4 main buckets of risk. If we take all of those risks and superimpose them on the initial plan that we had for the ice cream truck business, guess what? A lot of the things that we discussed with multifamily underwriting are the same things that we were discussing when we were trying to see if Tenny's amazing growth idea for Excite Capital were aligned, right? We didn't talk about every single thing, because if we start talking about underwriting, it can be weeks. We can take each one of these risks, break them down into different sub-risks, and have a whole lecture about it. But the point that I'm trying to get across is that all of this just comes down to risk assessment. These are businesses. You're not dealing with single family homes. Now you're dealing with a business, and you're trying to assess, whether it's looking at the financial data, looking at the market, looking at the lending environment. You're trying to assess what are the risks associated with this business, and what mitigation strategies do I have to come up with to make sure I have a plan for each of these risks when they do occur. You're not going to be able to identify every single risk, but your goal is to do your due diligence and find and identify as many risks as possible before going into the investment. Now, I get back to the initial picture I had mentioned, and I ask you one more time, deal or no deal? Drop in the chat. How are we looking?
Deal or no deal? You wanted to choose A or B?
Yep.
No deal. Everybody's saying no deal. No
Great.
deal.
Right. Why no deal? Because I provided zero information. I just sent you 2 pictures and I say invest in these deals. I didn't tell you anything about these properties. So how can you invest in a property you don't even understand or know the risk associated with it? So absolutely no deal, because you need to ask more information to learn more. But I knew you guys were going to say no deal, right? So I'm going to make this even better. So now I come to you and I say, guess what? Property to the left is located in Inglewood, right next to the new Clipper Stadium. There's a high demand in that area. It's growing. If you've driven by that area, you can see all the businesses going there. So the future of that area looks promising. The picture on the right, this is located in St. Louis. And I know, I showed you the population growth in St. Louis. It was declining, but I found this pocket in St. Louis where there are businesses moving to that area. Amazon has opened a hub in there. A lot of things are going on there. So I found this property, which is in high demand. And now I'm offering you these returns for these 2 properties. Now, which one are you going to pick, A or B? Now you have the location. I've already done the initial screening for you. And now I'm showing you the projected returns for both of these deals.
A or B?
A or B? I'll give you 10 seconds.
Everybody's going B.
B?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going with A. Nataki is with me. A.
Okay.
All right. Miles says A.
Got it. Okay.
Addy's
So
going
now,
A. None.
oh, it's still going? Okay. I'll give it a few
Yeah.
seconds.
All right. B. All right. Go for it.
Okay. Now, this is for my passive investors. I told you I had something for you. So I just want to stress by stating there's no such thing as a passive investor. And I hear this all the time. I'm a passive investor. There's no such thing as a passive investor. And the reason is no one will ever present you with a bad deal. If you can tell me one person that came up to you and say, hey, I have this deal, it's a crappy deal, I want $50,000 from you. No one is going to present you with a bad deal. And the reason I have this slide is because I spend a lot of times underwriting deals. At the same time, I also attend a lot of webinars, especially when they're talking about deals or talking about underwriting. There's a lot of deals that we underwrite at Excited Capital. We underwrite hundreds of deals a year, screen thousands of deals every year. There's deals that we underwrite, and I'm like, this is a crappy deal. Don't even look at it. Pass on it. And I would attend a webinar, and I see that same deal and someone promoting that deal with all these returns that they can potentially get for the investors. So what I'm trying to stress is that there's no such thing as a passive investor. You as an investor also have to underwrite the deal. Maybe not to the magnitude that we do at Excite Capital, but you always want to trust but verify. You want to ask the tough questions. How are you going to do that? What happens if this happens? What does that mean? What is the average annual return? What is going to do? What are you going to do if this happens? So always ask the tough questions, because from your perspective, that's how you're assessing the risk. Remember, we all come from different backgrounds, haircare professionals, IT professionals, whatever your career is. $50,000 is a lot of money, right? $50,000, whether you're giving it to somebody, trusting them to do the right thing with it, it's still a lot of money. right? And as syndicators, we hold the fiduciary duty to make sure that your investment is safe. And that's one of the things that we focus here on Excite Capital, is not just taking your money, but educating you to understand what you're investing in. What does that mean? So it's important to know that there's no such thing as a passive investor. The same way a bank would underwrite the deal to see if it's a good investment before they loan money to that property, you as a passive investor, you want to ask the tough questions, assess your risk, and determine if it's a good investment. And let's start with equity multiple. Well, what is equity multiple? Well, it's a measure of an investor's return for equity invested in a real estate deal. It provides insight into future potential. It provides insight into the potential for future wealth accumulation and risk. Think of equity multiple in this sense. If I walk into a casino in Vegas and I have $100 and I put that $100 on a roulette table in red, 10 seconds later, the roulette hit red and I walk away with $200. Well, I just 2x my money. So that equity multiple in that sense is 2x. But what I didn't tell you is how much it took for me to make that 2x. If I told you I walked in there and I made $100 extra in 2 seconds, I'm a genius or I'm lucky, right? What if I told you I sat at that same table and it took me 3 days just to double my money? Or it took me 10 years to double my money? Is that still a good investment? No. That's the limitation with equity multiple, because equity multiple does not tell you how long that investment was held for. It just tells you these were your total distributions divided by your initial investment. So if I promise you an equity multiple of 10x or 2x, that means nothing, right? If I say it's a 2x over a 2-year period, that's a great investment. If I say it's that same 2x over a 20-year period, you're probably going to walk away. So it's important, again, to ask the right questions. Now, let's talk about average annual return, right? Average annual return, which is commonly used for a lot of investors because they understand it better, it's a measure of the annualized performance of a real estate investment. So it quantifies the average profit or loss from an investment over a specified period. What average annual return tries to do is like solve the limitation with equity multiple, because it does take into consideration now how long that property was held for. If you look at the formula, is the total profit divided by the initial investment divided by the number of years held. But there is a limitation with the average annual return. So, and I know I promised I wasn't going to talk about numbers, but I just want to use numbers here to get the point across. So look at 2 deals. Both of these deals are promising you an average annual return of 20%. Well, deal number 1, you're going to get 20% in year 1, 20% in year 2, 20% in year 3, 20% in year 4, and 20% in year 5. So you get 20% average annual return over a 5-year hold period. Now, deal number 2 also promising you a 20% average annual return, but you're going to get 0% in year 1, 0% in year 2, 0% in year 3, 0% in year 4, and 100% on exit. So if you are an investor that would promise 20% and you were expecting to get some of that money in year 1 and reinvest in somewhere else, and you are not asked the right questions, guess what? You're short. Because what they didn't tell you is that 20%, it's all going to come from the last year. So always ask the right question. So if we get back to this deal or no deal with the information I provided to you, and you guys mentioned you pick A or B, the truth is it really doesn't matter, because this presentation wasn't about a game of deal or no deal. I wanted to really, really reemphasize the point that underwriting is not complex. The reason a lot of people struggle with underwriting is because they immediately jump into dealing with numbers without fully understanding the concepts. So once you understand the concepts and start applying, the application part becomes the easier part. So focus on understanding the concepts before you go into picking an analyzer and hoping the analyzer is going to tell you what to do. But if you want to review this, all I did here was just provide you with a series of returns. I didn't tell you how long those investments were held for. I didn't tell you what the profit breakdown was. And as a passive investors, those are information that you want to know to make sure that if you're giving your $50,000, you understand the risk associated with that property. How are we doing? Do we have about 2 minutes? I just have a short story.
Yeah, you have 2 minutes. Go for it.
Okay. So short story. And so a few years ago, we were on the verge of closing a deal, one of the deals for Excite Capital, like literally at the last few hours of closing this deal. And we realized that there was a critical error in the underwriting that was going to cost Excite Capital and its partners $1 million. This is not a joke, real life scenario. We're in the war room that morning trying to decide, do we walk away from this deal, lose $1 million for Excite Capital, or what do we do? Do we try to negotiate? And one of the things that I took out from that experience, and just for everyone's knowledge, we were able to resolve the issue just by renegotiating. But one of the things that I took from that experience is that from when we started Excite Capital, from when the founder started Excite Capital and I joined, is that we were using an analyzer, and we were using an analyzer that was not built to fulfill the type of deals that we wanted to do, right? So we're competing for institutional grade assets, right? But the analyzer that we were using was not built to analyze institutional grades. And I can't even tell you how many optimizations and upgrades I made to the analyzer. Regardless of what I did, it just itself, the body of the analyzer, that's not what it was built for. So we're showing up to all these underwriting committees. We're showing up to the best and finals, competing with institutions for deals, and we're not on the same page. And the reason is, and I like to use this analogy, is because we had a Honda Civic. Just bear with me. We had a Honda Civic, and it didn't matter how much turbo we put into this Honda Civic to go compete at a top race for $1 million deals. At some point it's going to break. And that finally broke because the body of the car itself was still a Honda Civic. It didn't matter how much of a V8 or how much turbo we put into it. And what really drove me to create the MSA Analyzer is because I wanted us to show up at that racetrack like all the other institutional investors with confidence. We can talk about our numbers. We can show our underwriting. And so what we did, we took a Honda Civic with all these optimizations that we were trying to do. And I use this analogy when I underwrite deals now, because the Honda Civic was the pre-MSA Analyzer. And the Lamborghini that we show up with now when we go to best and finals, that's the MSA Analyzer error. And I've created a series of tutorial videos on YouTube. So go check it out to see if it can be of benefit to your business. But if you want to learn more about the MSA Analyzer, it's at msanalytica.com. And for our Excite investor community, like I mentioned, I launched the MSA Analytica last year. For the Excite Capital community today and this time only, we're doing a 20% off for the first 5 buyers. After that cuts off. You can scan that QR code or go to the MS Analytica page. But listen, my focus is for you understanding the concepts and understanding how to underwrite it. The MSA Analyzer just serves as a companion to apply the knowledge that you've already learned. And that's why one of the things that I really focused on before launching this product was an underwriting course. This is 10 hours of everything I've talked about today and way, way more, going through all the different metrics, case studies, all the experiences that we've come across, all the challenges that we've faced. For you, so you can learn. So when you start underwriting deals, you underwrite with confidence. Again, the MSA Analyzer wasn't this groundbreaking product that I wanted to build from the start. It was something that came from taking all the pain points that we're facing, and I converted those into features. So struggle with the rent roll, I created a feature for that. Struggle with the T12, I created a feature for that. And projecting future taxes, there's a feature for that. Assuming existing loans, there's a feature for that. So check it out, msanalytica.com/product. The promo code is Excite20 for the first 5 buyers. After that, it goes up to regular price. And with that, thank you so much for your time. And I am very, very sorry for the technical difficulties we had earlier. And I'll take any questions that you have.
Always.
Oh, and follow me
Always.
on social media. I started dropping a lot of content on underwriting at mannyawasom.com. No, sorry, at Manny Awasom on all the platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. And if you want to follow MS Analytica content, you can go to MS Analytica and Excite Capital We're on all the different platforms as well. Thank you. Sorry about
Man,
that.
man. Always a powerful presentation where Manny is on board. This is really good. And for all of you active that are looking to be active in multifamily investing, I gotta tell you, there's nothing out there like the MS Analytical. There's absolutely nothing out there. When I started this journey, I remember it used to take me about 5, 6 hours to underwrite a single deal. Now I don't know how he figured it out, but he figured out a way to speed that on the writing from 5 hours to less than an hour. So MS Analytica is a great tool to speed up your underwriting. It was built by a busy professional to serve other busy professionals that are getting in the business. So you're able to do this while you work your full-time job. So anybody, you have any questions about underwriting analysis, please drop it in the chat. We still have some time. I think we still have about 12 more minutes to answer any questions that you have. Yeah, great. The comments are firing off. Learned a lot too much today. Thank you, Manny. Great job. Great presentation, Manny. Good job, everybody. And thank you guys for joining us. So here's your chance. Manny's an underwriting genius. You got him for the next 10, 15 minutes. Ask any questions about underwriting you
Yep.
got. Nataki is saying, awesome work, Manny. Still don't have a head for the numbers, though. Don't worry, Nataki. You're not the only one.
It gets
I'll tell
better
you
with
guys a
MS
funny story.
It gets
Yeah,
better with MS
go ahead.
Analyzer. It gets better.
Even Tenny, who hates underwriting, likes underwriting because of the MS Analyzer. So I think you'll be fine, Itaki. All right. What are a few questions passive investors should ask?
Um, I mean, every deal is different, but once you get the deal documents, you want to ask what are the risks associated with that investment. What are some of the challenges that they faced on previous deals, and what were some of the things that they did to kind of overcome those challenges? Have they invested in that market before? What type of loan are they putting on that property? And the thing with I'm sure you guys saw in the past few years where a lot of multifamily properties were getting went under distress because of the type of loan that can make or break multifamily investment thesis. So you want to ask what type of loans and what are the risks associated with each of those loan strategies. So there are several different questions. It just depends on the investments per se. But the main ones, right? Always remember your product and your customers. The main ones that any investor, passive investor, can do themselves is you just analyze that location itself. If you have an investment, if someone comes to you with an investment in a city in let's say with a county in Houston, just type the name of that county and look up the population growth. You can do those analysis yourself. Look up what's around that property, right? If they're telling you there's a bunch of businesses around that property, but you go to Google, put in that address, and nothing comes up, then you know you shouldn't be dealing with that general partner. So a lot of the things that we do to screen deals, passive investors can do as well. If they'll promise you a certain return, you want to ask them what happens if they're not able to generate those returns. What are the risks? What are some risks that can derail them from achieving those rent growth that they have promised? So those are some of the questions that you can ask. But it's a multiple. There's quite a few. It just depends on the deal.
That's another question from Earl Hamilton asking, does the analyzer provide you the visuals to integrate it that you could integrate into your pitch deck?
It provides you visuals like the unit mix breakdown, the lease up table. It just depends on what you're trying to add into the pitch deck. It does provide you with a clear pro forma, very broken down by the year. You can also copy that and put into your pitch deck, and that's what we use for Grove Park View. So it does provide you with very clean visuals that you can copy and put into your pitch deck.
Yeah, I love the pie chart that it creates for like the unit mix. It is so beautiful that you could just copy and put on there. Even for like the breakdown of the like the like one piece of it that I really like is like that renovation schedule, like the value add tab that has all it's so detailed and man, it makes life so easy because I remember in the previous analyzer that we used to use, we had to add that tab and do all of that. Then everything did not merge together. But right now, with this, you drop rent roll, drop T12, boom. It's like everything just appears. So Really, really powerful tool. Really, really powerful tool. If you ever get a chance to play with it, you will love it. All right, guys, keep the questions coming. This is some really good questions. Good questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in here and add something real quick. This tool is so powerful, it's a life-changing tool. And I say that to say, if you look at Leslie's eyes right now, he has glasses on. It's because he used to spend 6, 7 hours underwriting deals, and then Manny came on board and made his life completely simple. So it's not just about because we review a lot of deals a year. From a number perspective, we review about 56 deals a week. We underwrite about seven of those deals. In order for us to compete in the marketplace, we have to have speed. And I think that's one of the things manufactured into this whole process to create this tool. So we're super excited to be using it at Excite Capital. This is what we used to buy our deals. So if you want to see how you can buy all these awesome deals that we have, again, check it out.
Yes. All right. You want to compete with institutions, you got to get institutional grade tools. And there's a ton of value. Again, we're doing a lot of education. We've made a commitment this year to double down our 6th anniversary, double down on educating our community. So you can watch Manny's videos online. I watch them too, and I enjoy watching them because I call him the professor because he knows how to explain things in such a simple way. So, yeah. So there's a question here from Earl again. As a new syndicator, once you've underwritten the deal and developed a business plan, how do you go about identifying and partnering with an experienced sponsor like Excite?
Leslie and Tenny, that's for you.
Do you want me to take it, Leslie?
Go ahead, Tenny.
Around you find the partners before you find the deal. That's how I'll explain it. Because you want to start building relationship with potential partners before you find the deal. Because if you have the deal and then that's when you want to go start finding partners, you put yourself in a disadvantaged position, right? So I would highly recommend start building the relationship. The folks that you're looking to partner with, look for where they are and go look for them over there and start building this relationship. So that you start looking for the deals, you can run it by them. So that you run it by them, they'll understand the kind of deals you're looking for and see if you meet their buy box. And if you meet their buy box, that's how you find a partnership. And this is based on experience, by the way.
Yes,
Does that make
that's
sense?
exactly what we did. That's exactly what we did. 2019, we were new syndicators, just like you, Earl. Went to a conference in Boston, met some guys over there, created a relationship with them, and we kept in communication. And they said, "Okay, when you find a deal, let us know." And that's exactly what happened. Found a deal, reached out to them. They took a look at it. Oh yeah, this is exactly the buy box we were talking about, and they became our partners. They KP'd on the deal and became co-GPs as well. So, yeah. So that's how you go about it. All right. Joy says, thanks, Manny. Great presentation. Dr. Lajide is asking, is there an annual fee for the analyzer or it's a lifetime access once purchased?
It's a once purchased, it's yours. For future upgrades, it's gonna be like a small fee, but once you purchase it, it's yours. You can download it from the MS Analytica website. You can have it on your own, and that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure it was different. Not having that, not gatekeep the analyzer. You can take it, you can make changes to it, because that's what we did when we started as well. So again, this for me was to add value to the community that has always supported us, and we're all busy professionals. So I wanted to see how best can we help other busy professionals, right? And this was my contribution to that. So yeah, it's once you buy it, it's yours. There's going to be future upgrades, but it's going to be for a small fee, and that's TBD.
All right, great. And by the way, Dr. Lajide, you have access to this as a part of the elite one-on-one mentorship with Excite
Yep.
Capital. So you get access to this already. So
Yes.
yeah,
Excitement tees, for the elite excitement tees, they get access to it.
yeah.
That and the underwriting course as well.
Yeah, so yeah, we like we said, it's our tools. You as a mentee of Excel Capital, you get access to everything that Excel gets access to. Our tools, our resources, everything. Dr. Kem, I learned how to underwrite attending Manny's underwriting course, and you are a superstar underwriter, so it's amazing. I gotta give a testimony. One of our mentees that came on board, I remember the first day, she was panicking. She was talking about, oh my God, I'm 50 years old. I don't know Excel. Oh, this is bad. How am I gonna do this? How am I gonna do this deal? And I gotta say, Manny took her and her husband and taught them everything. Like right now, this couple, they're underwriting like 3 deals a week, and like it's nothing. It is so fascinating and so amazing to watch the progression that happens when Professor Manny takes this over. And for you guys that are getting access to this, because I'm telling you, you're gonna learn so much. You're gonna learn so much, so much, so much. So it's gonna be amazing. Um, how do you become a mentee for Excite? Oh, that's a great question. Fella, you want to reach out to Earl and let's get on a call and see if we could we're gonna talk to Earl and see if he's a good fit for the program. All right. Our mentorship, we this year, we every year for our one-on-one, the Elite Vanguard program, we take just 20 people, and because it's like very immersed, so we restrict the number of people we can take. So we'll talk to you, Earl, and see if it makes sense. If it's a good fit for you, then we'll take it from there. All right, guys. Any other questions? The professor is here. Uh, Bridget is asking, did you say if you walked away from the deal or did you renegotiate?
We renegotiated, and Tenny worked his magic. I don't know how he did it, but it's an issue that we're able to resolve.
So the seller ended up eating off
The
that
cost,
cost because
yeah,
Tenny is that's why we call him Tenacious Tenny.
yeah. But
And
it
that's
was
just
it would have affected Excite Capital profit margin per se, not necessarily the future investment. So at closing, it would have affected like the acquisition cost. So that's what we're
yeah.
losing, not the deal
So
itself.
and this that's a very important point. And this is some of the things that we learn that we teach people. It's like nothing is fixed in this business.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter what anybody tells you, nothing is fixed. You can negotiate anything,
Yeah.
right? So when you get in the business, you go in the transaction, don't get too like everything is negotiable, and we had to find ourselves in difficult positions and then push, and then things happen. Yes, you have to be a person of integrity, keep your word, but nothing is stuck. Like everything is malleable. It's business. So at the end of the day, it has to make sense for both parties. So yeah, you could walk your way through anything. So that just to say, don't be afraid to go out there and take the step because you can go in and get and face some challenges, but you would be able to overcome those challenges. So what percentage do you typically allocate for an acquisition cost? 3%, 5%?
It depends on the size of the deal. If you're dealing with like a $30 million deal, it can be anywhere from 3%. If you're dealing with a $50 million deal, it can be 2%. It's on a percentage basis depending on the size of the deal. If you have a $60 million deal, you wouldn't do it like 4% acquisition fee. On the other hand, if you have a $10 million deal, you might do a 4% acquisition fee. So it just depends on the size of the deal. It's relative to the size of the deal.
Okay. So can we drop the link to Manny's website again? I got somebody sent me a message that we might have had the link spelled incorrectly. Uh, Manny, you want to drop the link in the chat for anybody that's interested? So,
Yeah, it's
um, is that the correct link? msanalytica.com?
yeah. There's no L at the end.
Yeah, but the link's
There's
working
no
fine
L.
if you click it. The
Yeah.
link's working fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
And for the checklist, it's just msanalytica.com/checklist.
All right. All right,
And that's
guys, go
the
get that
free checklist.
checklist. If nothing else, even if you're doing this on your own, that checklist, a lot of thought went behind it. So go get the checklist, use it, make good investment decisions. Even if you're buying single family, use it. It's gonna help you make quick and really good investment decisions. There's someone here on the call, had a great conversation with her, and she reached out to me the other day talking about she's about to close a deal. Miss Joy, I'm super proud of you. Keep going. Next, we're gonna buy that 50 unit building. So keep going.
That's the
All
spirit.
right, everybody. Any more questions, guys? Any more questions? Let's create some more owners in 2025. Keep coming
Yes.
to our events. Check out our links. Adi, I don't know if we want to drop links for people to join in, sign up to our email list or whatever. Come, learn, grow, go out and buy deals for yourself. Thank you guys, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for joining. And join the club. Yeah, join the Beyond 9 to 5 club. We're going to be providing a ton of education on there. All right. And Manny, any
Perfect.
final words as we wrap it
No,
up?
I just want to say thank you so much for coming to the monthly webinar. We appreciate it. Continue to join every month. Join the Beyond 5 Club, Excite Capital. Our goal, again, like I mentioned, there's no such thing as passive investing. So whether you're a passive investor or an active investor, we're going to continue to provide value to you. Whether you want to do it on your own or do it with us, the goal is for us, everyone in our community, to continue to create that generational wealth.
All right, guys. Hasta la
Take
vista.
care,
Happy
everybody.
birthday, Excite. Have a good night, everybody.
Oh yeah, happy birthday, Excite Capital.
Catch the morning
All right.
train.
All right,
Same
good night,
routine
everyone.
playing like a broken refrain. Monday to Friday, clock just ticks away. Years are passing while my dreams fade away. 9 to 5, eating up my life. 9 to 5, cutting like a knife. But I refuse to let it be my story. I'm turning pain into glory. Started learning, staying after hours, becoming wise, gaining hidden powers. Every meeting became my classroom, yeah. Every challenge showed me who I am. Yeah. Yeah. Took the system that held me down, flipped it over, now I wear the crown. Experience became my greatest tool. Now I'm teaching others all these rules. 9 to 5, transform my life. 9 to 5, cutting like a knife. But I refuse to let it be my story. I'm turning pain into glory. 9 to 5, eating up my life. 9 to 5, cutting like a knife. But I refuse to let it be my story. I'm turning pain into glory. Started learning, staying after hours, becoming wise, gaining hidden powers. But I refuse to let it be my story. I'm turning pain into glory. Started learning to glory. Started learning to glory. Started learning to glory. Started learning, stay learning, it came my time. Me down, leaving it behind. I'm 9 to 5. Beyond, beyond, beyond the grind. Beyond, beyond, leaving it behind. But I'm 9 to 5.